Back when I was in college in Texas, my roommates and I decided to drive to Boulder, Colorado for spring break. To maximize our time in Boulder, we decided to take shifts and drive all the way through rather than stopping for overnight stays. It was roughly an 18-hour trip, so I'm driving on my shift when we reached the Texas Panhandle in the early morning hours. We were out in the middle of nowhere and have not seen a single car in either direction for ages when we noticed headlights behind us. The car came up on us quickly, then followed behind for some time. Oddly, it would get real close to us, then back off real far, then get close again. This pattern continued for several miles. We are in the car nervously joking about it being a potential deliverance situation, set in Texas flatland. Suddenly, the headlights were joined by red and blue police lights. It was so dark out there that we had not seen the light bar on the hood and had not realized we were being followed by a cop. I checked my speedometer and I'm not speeding, so we're all wondering why we're getting pulled over. But I go ahead and pull to the shoulder. Up comes a cop wearing a cowboy hat to my window. He shines his light in the car and looks us over, then asks me to get out of the car. I hesitate at first, but there are 3 other people in the car, so I'm not feeling particularly unsafe at this point. I grab my wallet, get out, and stand against the driver door. The cop looks at my license and insurance, then tells me he's going to do a sobriety test. I'm thinking, what the heck? But I know I've had nothing to drink, so I say okay. The way the cop directed me for the walking in a straight line test had me ending my walk right by his car. When I finished, he reached over to open his back passenger's door and then told me to get in. What? Why? I said. Sit in the car while I look up your license. Now, I had heard how doors on the back of a cop car only open from the outside, so I know if I get in his car and he closes it, I won't be able to get out. It's like 3 a.m. in the morning, pitch black darkness, on a road dozens of miles from any civilization. I am not getting in that car. I'm sorry, sir. With all respect and for my own safety, I do not want to get in the back of your car. What did you say to me? He asked. Me repeating. For my own safety and with all respect, I am not sitting in the back of your car. You can call for another officer to come out here, but I do not feel safe getting in there. Do you realize I could arrest you right now for not obeying an order from a police officer? Me repeating again. Sir, not meaning to be disrespectful, but I'm not getting in the car. We go back and forth like this for several minutes, him threatening to arrest me. My friends, hold us overnight, and all of that, and me refusing to get in the car still. The cop then leers at me and asks, what are you afraid of, being kidnapped? What the heck? How messed up to even ask that. I glance towards my car and see my friends piled up at the back window, watching the 2 guys looking ready to jump out. The cop turns to look at them too. I don't know what went through his mind, but after being completely aggressive with me for what seemed like forever, he finally gave me a creepy smile, handed back my license and insurance, tipped his hat, then got in the car and drove off. At this point, I was shaking so badly that my friends had to help me get back in the car. I don't even remember if he gave me a ticket. I was so glad that I had not cried in front of this jerk, but I totally broke down once in the back seat. To this day, I think about this dickhead deciding to terrorize a young college female at 3 a.m. in the middle of rural Texas, and often wondered what would have happened if I had not stood my ground and instead gotten in that damn cop car. To give a little context, I used to work at an apartment complex. As a result, I've had my fair share of creepy encounters. Most residents keep to themselves and don't cause issues. Probably about 95%, but the other 5% took up almost all of my time. Isaac was one of the 5%. When he first rented his apartment, he definitely had stoner vibes, but he was nice enough and passed his background check. Almost immediately, however, he started causing issues. The lady next door complained that she could smell his smoke constantly. The guy downstairs complained he could hear his stereo all hours of the day and night. Another resident also accused him of following him home one night. The police were regularly there breaking up fights between him and his girlfriends. He caught him hiding 2 large dogs in his apartment, and he regularly let them run loose, which ultimately resulted in another dog and 2 people getting attacked. He accidentally discharged a gun in his apartment once even. Needless to say, he caused a lot of problems. At first he was very apologetic and said he would make an effort to remedy the problems, but things kept getting worse. And after a year of weekly calls or notices from the office, he eventually became standoffish. One morning, I received a call from Isaac letting me know he'd broken up with one of his girls and she wouldn't leave the apartment. He asked me to personally come up and remove her. I'm a small woman, so even if I wanted to take the risk, I physically wouldn't be capable of wrestling an angry woman out of his apartment. I suggested that he call the police. He then asked if I could make a maintenance man come up to remove her. I offered to call the police on his behalf, but Isaac said he didn't want to involve them and hung up. A few hours later, Isaac came down to the office with a jump drive and said he needed to print out a 50-plus page document. Residents weren't technically allowed to use our office printer, but on the rare occasion someone asked to, I usually didn't say no. It was an easy way to build good rapport. But between Isaac becoming such a problem tenant and how large his document was, I told him I couldn't print it for him. I gave the excuse that our paper and toner and print history was monitored and we would get in trouble for printing such a large document out for him. Not liking my answer, of course, he started screaming about how that was BS, accused me of being useless and bringing up my refusal to fight his ex, and power tripping. He called me a bitch multiple times and said somebody needed to bring me down. I was pretty over him at this point and told him that if he was going to behave like a child, then he needed to leave. He told me I couldn't make him. Bluntly, I told him he would leave or I would call the police and have him removed. I also told him I would ban him from the office going forward. Normally, I try to kill the residents with kindness, but his lease was ending in a week and I didn't care anymore if he hated me. My threat seemed to work. He angrily knocked my pen holder over, then slammed both doors hard as he left. The following morning, a cop was waiting for me when I got to work. He asked if Isaac was a resident and I confirmed he was. The officer explained that the body of a teen had been discovered the day before and Isaac was their prime suspect. He was the last person to text the kid, asking him to meet where his body was found shortly after the message. The police believed Isaac had been paid to kill him. Based on the timing of the text and when the boy was discovered, Isaac would have been left to my office and gone directly there. Ultimately, the police wanted to use Isaac's move-out day as an opportunity to try and catch him. To nobody's surprise, he didn't show up. When I walked to his apartment to inspect for damage, there was a lot, mind you. I found a bank receipt from the day of the murder. Somebody had wired him $17,000. I thankfully never saw Isaac again. He was caught in another country a few months later and is now in prison. This isn't so much one encounter, but it was a terrifying experience. I've never told this story to anyone beside the police, but I've been thinking a lot about it lately and only recently realized how much the whole thing has really messed me up. So here goes. I met this guy at a bar one night. We had a great time, partied all night, and eventually ended up back at my apartment. After that, he basically lived with me instead of the hostel he was staying at. We clicked right away, and I enjoyed having him there. We dated for about 3 months before the first night he attacked me. It was the night of my 30th birthday. We celebrated, had a blast, and passed out at about 3 a.m. He told me he had suffered from PTSD and night terrors. He had woken up many nights freaking out. I was deeply passed out when I awoke to 5 quick blows to my head and face. I tried to cover myself, not knowing at all what the heck was happening, when I realized my arms were pinned at my sides. He was sitting on my chest with his legs on my arms and strangling me before I had any idea where I even was. I only remember the light fading and going black as he squeezed harder on my neck. When he let go, the blood eventually rushed back to my brain, and I remember seeing him walk to the bathroom. At that point, I grabbed the dogs and ran to my car and took off. He must have passed back out. He called me hours later, completely confused as to where I went. I told him everything he had done, and he promised he didn't mean to do any of that, and he would never do it on purpose, and he promised to seek help. I agreed to come back on the terms that if he ever scared me again, he'd be gone. Exactly 1 week later, again in my sleep, I woke up to him on top of me, but not doing anything. I slowly pushed him off and pretended to be getting ready for work. Out of nowhere, he jumped up and sucker punched me in the mouth. I fell onto the bed and he again tried to strangle me. This time I didn't fight and pretended to pass out. He let me go once he thought I was passed out and went to the kitchen. As soon as he left, I grabbed my dogs again and booked it to the car. I jumped in the car and locked it. This time he chased me. That was when I realized this wasn't some PTSD nightmare sleepwalking freakout. He was a psychopath. He was awake and very coherent. He was screaming that he'd burn my house down if I didn't come out, trying to break the windows to get in my car. As soon as I got the doors locked, I called the cops. He went back inside. When the cops arrived, I told them he's crazy and might try to attack them. When they went in, he was quietly waiting for them and went with them without any resistance. He knew what he did. It wasn't until during the trial I found out that there was a knife in my bed. When he let go of me and went to the kitchen, thinking I was passed out, he went to get a butcher's knife and left it on the bed when he chased me out. No one can prove what he was planning, but I am convinced he was going to stab me to death. He wasn't charged with anything in the end because the DA pulled some fancy luring maneuvers and tricked him into walking right into the arms of ICE as soon as he left the courthouse. I have to say that was satisfying to watch. He was deported and banned from the country. He still tries to contact me on social media by making new accounts to try to get me to help with his appeal to be allowed back. Nope, He still claims he wasn't awake for any of this. I don't know what I believe, but I know I feel a lot safer with him on the other side of the globe. I've been having a hard time sleeping since then. I kind of brushed everything off and carried on with my life, as if none of them ever happened. Thinking about it recently, I realized being attacked in your sleep, and coming that close to possibly being a murder victim, might cause some lasting psychological damage. I am considering seeking help. I think maybe sharing the story for once might be a very first healthy step. Just for a bit of background, I, male 17, was with my girlfriend, female 18, in England on a little getaway with my parents. Also to point out, even though I'm 17, I definitely look younger. I'm 5'4", roughly, and due to that, I occasionally get misaged by different people. I think this should be known for later on in this story. Also, I wear a swimming top when I go in any swimming pool because I get anxious. My girlfriend and I decided it would be cool for us to go for a swim in the pool within the hotel. It was nothing super big or super small, and luckily there was only one other guy doing laps in the pool. Nothing was remotely strange in the slightest. This is an inside pool for the record. I put down our towels and the key to our locker on a chain and got in. Around 5 minutes later, an older man, probably 40 to 50, entered the room in a small pink bikini. Obviously, it's a bit odd to see and very uncommon, however, I don't actually have a real issue with it. Each to their own, I guess. What was weird is when he entered, I and my girlfriend kept very much to ourselves, with minimal eye contact with anyone else in the pool, and we didn't speak. However, this guy came over to us almost immediately and said, "Hey." Out of kindness, we both said hi back and smiled. Normal stuff, I guess. He would swim around the area of us and make eye contact specifically with me repeatedly. I felt beyond weird as I wanted to relaxing swim with my girlfriend. He continuously swam in our area until he made the comment about how he hopes I don't mind that he wears lady clothes, as he is gay. Yes, he looked me in the eyes as he said that. I felt slightly awkward because he was in a bikini. Not that anything is wrong with that, however, I just couldn't help but notice he was looking at me often. I was growing more and more uncomfortable. However, I didn't want to be a nuisance and make my girlfriend get out of the pool because of it. Nothing much really happened while in the pool itself from that point onwards, as we didn't move much around. Pretty much hovering in one spot, talking with me slightly nervously. He went and spoke to the other guy swimming for a while, but kept peeking at me while doing so. To be honest, I think the other guy just wanted to swim and didn't care what he was talking about. However, after that chat, he then got out. As the guy got out of the pool, he went and laid down on the chair next to the one we had with our towels on. I don't know if he specifically chose that one on purpose, as he could clearly see it was ours, as 2 towels were there. It could be excused as a coincidence, I guess. However, once my girlfriend walked away and I was grabbing my towel, he decided to ask in a specific tone about why I was wearing my swimming top. This gave me incredible vibes of him flirting in a way, asking me why I wouldn't take my shirt off when I swim. I was stumped and answered with, because sunburn. Keep in mind we are in an inside pool. I also just said it felt comfortable because I realized we are inside and I probably looked beyond stupid. He smiled at me and said, "Oh, okay," or something along those lines. He then said, "I think you look better without it on." This made my heart race and I was ready to go. I was shocked he even had the guts to say that to me, so I just laughed it off and said bye. I feel like it was incredibly inappropriate to even ask a child why he wears swimming tops, let alone already have made it known that you are gay and you like wearing lady clothes, and then state I would look better topless. Sir, I have been mistaken as a 12-year-old in the last year. I have a deeper voice, and if you knew my age, I'm sure you could realize that I'm truly 17, but initially a lot of people think I'm younger than that. I managed to escape and get dry and changed in the changing rooms without him coming in at all. If he did, I would have known it's on site, but yeah, that's my weird little story. I'm really interested in hearing some opinions about how you feel about this situation, if you think it was completely normal or if it seemed like there was weird intent. Although, understand it's different when you are in this situation and you can properly understand emotion and intent with someone rather than being told it. I always sleep with one eye open, but I haven't used a sleeping aid to this day because of what happened that night. For some context, I used to live alone with my mom when I was a teenager, and she was on some pretty powerful sleeping meds at the time. I guess it runs in the family because I was also a deep insomniac, sometimes missing sleep for days at a time. So I turned towards a slightly more natural option than my mom, a blend of supplements including Valerian, along with some other stuff that seemed to help. By bedtime, I went back to my room. I had divided the room in a way that I had to go around a shelving unit to get to my bed. I left the layout of my room looking like a U shape, where one end of the U was the door and the other was my bed. I took my supplements, and as they kicked in, I slowly faded to sleep. I don't exactly know how much time passed, but I woke up in a daze, still well sedated. I was nudged from my slumber because I heard a muffled voice in my room, but I was still half awake and I couldn't process the words being said. I managed to open my eyes, and my vision was still blurry. I could see that there was a man facing me, very tall, standing on the other side of the shelving unit where the door was. A tall man, I thought to myself, still in a daze. Then my brain kicked into overdrive. I lived alone with my mom, and the only other man here was me. Adrenaline finally rushed through me, waking me up for good, and I sprang up. I feel I must preface what happens next with the fact that I was a bit of a wild kid at the time and was really into weapons and knives, and next to my bed was my trusty machete. For people in the US, guns are kind of hard to come by in Canada unless you're a hunter/security with the proper license, but people here feel generally safe enough to omit having any kinds of weapon in their house at all. So let's just say that being a bit of a maniac for French-Canadian standards, I guess, paid off that day. I jumped off the bed and grabbed my machete, and as soon as he saw me reach for it, he did a quick 180 and bolted towards the exit. I ran around the shelving unit, looking like a half-naked Jason Voorhees. By the time I had reached the outside of my bedroom, he had already run out of the apartment. The first thing I noticed was that he had kicked the front door completely off its hinges to get in. I didn't hear anything like that, so I guess the meds were working. I was about to pursue him, but my mom finally entered my mind. Her room was right next to the entrance. Her door was closed, so I ran into her room only to find her fast asleep. Relief washed over me, and I woke her up as I dialed the police. The police came and were as useful as you'd imagine. If they don't catch you mid-murder, or at the very least with the intruder in the house, there isn't much they could do. I asked them what I'm supposed to do for the rest of the night without a front door in the middle of the city, and they assured me I probably scared the guy enough for him to not come back. After they left, I told my mom to go back to sleep and I would stand guard for the rest of the night. I sat up on the couch with the machete next to me and stayed awake until the sun came up. But as I sat there at night and thought about the whole ordeal, some creepy details stood out to me. The intruder had left every door in the house closed except for the one to my bedroom. He essentially kicked the front door in and went straight to my room. I also wondered, what was he saying to me before I finally got my senses back? Was this just someone drugged out of their mind, or maybe someone who used to live here looking for someone else only to find me? Or was this all meant for me? Worst yet, if that were the case, what would have happened if I weren't armed at that moment? So let's just say that putting a weapon next to my bed has become a new tradition whenever I move somewhere new. And though my sleep has gotten much better, it's not very hard to wake me up. I also have a lot of crazy stories from my travels, including making friends with a cannibal in India, fighting off a pack of wolves in a screaming match, almost getting murdered by angry monkeys and apes on 3 different occasions, and close encounters with a horde of hand-sized spiders coming face to face with a wasp nest 3 times my size. But I have to say, man is still the scariest of all creatures. Before I begin, this guy has been fired and this whole story took place months and months ago. Alright, so I was hired to work at this auto shop at the front desk receptionist. My guy friend had worked there and had gotten me the job. I checked customers in, checked them out, answered phones, entered invoices. Blah blah blah, boring stuff. Now at this time I got hired, I was freshly 15. I do in fact act mature for my age, and all of the horse shit, I was still technically a child, and I was also the only girl working here. Now, my 2 managers, let's call them Peter and Elvin. Peter was my main boss, and he had a dry sense of humor, but he was cool to be around. Elvin was more openly humorous, and he was just very pleasant in general. And then there was this third guy. I'll call him Chester because I hate that name. He was 40 with a girlfriend, as well as a 13-year-old daughter. He was very exuberant, very loud, quite funny, and also a dumbass too. But this isn't the right sub. It started off decent, and he would tease me like a boy on the playground. Like pull my hair, poke me, etc. Now, I laid my rules down when I first worked there. I hated being touched. That's that. Now, Chester would get as close to me as humanly possible and say, "I'm not touching you. Haha." It was annoying, and I just laughed it off, although I felt very uncomfortable. Then he started with the sexual jokes. When we were alone up front, he would go into talking about his sex life and pop a bunch of jokes. My brain was automatically like, this isn't right, and I just kind of put on my customer service voice whenever I was around him. Then one day I baked a whole batch of garage cookies. When I dropped them off, he came really close to me and sniffed me. You smell good and your hair looks nice this way. WTF. Nah, nope. Did not like that one bit. When I went back to work, he was going on and on about the cookies I made. He said, I know cookie is another term for something inappropriate, but I really like your cookies. Why even add that? And now my breaking point. He had started brushing his fingers against my leg when I was sitting down, or just trying to flirt with me in general. But when I came into work one day, he grabbed me into a hug and my mind blinked. He grabbed me. Full on grabbed me into a hug so I couldn't escape. I pushed him back away from me. Alvin had rounded the corner and had seen that happen, and he looked a little uneasy. I went around the other side of the counter, away from Chester, and I said, I don't like to be touched, dude. Don't hug me. And he said, well, touch is how I show my affection. So not only did he ignore my attempt to tell him to stop, he also admitted to literally giving affection to a 15-year-old. I later heard from my friend that works in the garage that Chester talked about the way I look a lot, and how I look older than I am, but that he doesn't want to start anything because his daughter was 2 years younger. Start what, bitch? Is what I'm thinking. Chester was ugly as heck, by the way. So Alvin had seen him grab me. The dudes in the garage heard him talk about me, and I knew this dude was creepy as heck. A guy in the garage, let's call him Steve, pulled Alvin aside and told him that he was worried for me. He told him what Chester has been saying and how he looks to be flirting with me. Before this point, Alvin had thought that he had been too overprotective because he had daughters himself, and maybe he was just having his father instinct kicked in. When Steve told him that, it basically confirmed his suspicions. Chester was gross. I ended up speaking up to Alvin near the end of the day, asking to stay after to talk to him about something. We stayed after, and I opened up to him about everything Chester had been doing. Alvin said that what I do is more important than the work that he does. After that, I went home and felt nice that my bosses cared for me like a human and not just an employee. Peter, my boss, texted me to tell me that everything's going to be okay and that he will be handled. I ended up meeting with Peter's dad, who is the big boss, to tell him everything. It was very much, we've known Chester for a long time, yada yada. But Big Boss is a good man and he trusted my word more. I told him everything. He has a camera recording of Chester grabbing me even. Chester was finally fired. The most traumatic thing to me was how he talked about me in the garage, like some kind of object. It was weird. Going back to the fact that he is 40 and I'm just 2 years older than his daughter. Shit's insane. I'm sure that if I weren't such a confident person, he would have taken advantage of me. He was very much acting like a predator, and I'm very glad he is no longer part of the establishment. So guys, teach your daughters to speak the heck up when people make them uncomfortable. Even the little things like weird jokes turn into something bigger. That's how it is for young women nowadays. Always enforce your boundaries and never ever let a guy get away with being a creep. Edit. As another thing I'm adding here is that he was very friendly. He's the type of guy that made customers blush and would make your parents feel comfortable with the smooth talk. Grooming isn't always straight up sexual advances right away. They try to get you to trust them first, be their friend, and then force you into things. So be careful, ladies and men, and all in between. This took place a couple of years ago. I was 16 or so. I'm 22 female now. I used to work at a well-known fast food restaurant. I typically had to work the closing shift since I had school earlier in the day, so by the time I got home, it was around 11:30 p.m. I had my own car at this time, and when I got off of work, I used to like to sit in my car, recline the driver's seat back, listen to music, and just chill out. I used to do this because I have helicopter parents, so this was the only real alone time that I got without being hovered around. Well, one particular night I was exhausted. I got stuck with the slow closers, so I got home a little bit later than normal. I started up my normal routine of sitting in my car, but instead of listening to music and scrolling through my phone, I leaned back and closed my eyes. I didn't fall asleep or anything. I was just listening to myself breathe while taking in the silence of my own company. I don't remember how long I was lying back with my eyes closed, but suddenly I bolted up and saw my mom with an angry face waving frantically at me. She was gesturing at me to come to her immediately. I sighed and hurried out of the car towards her. I would like to add my parents like to drink, so she was pretty inebriated when I approached them. She grabbed me by my shoulders and hissed, "Who was out there with you?" Confused, I shook her off. "Nobody, Mom. I was just sitting in my car by myself before I came in." I remember feeling a little bit annoyed because I thought I was going to get in trouble, but her face soon turned from angry to concern. "What?" "Somebody was out there. They were looking in at you through your window. I came out here because I had a funny feeling, and when they saw me, they took off in the neighbor's yard." She was slurring her words together terribly and was visibly shaking. Being the teenager that I was, I just rolled my eyes and took her inside. I just thought she was drunk, overprotective parent who got worried that I wasn't inside the house at the normal time. The next morning rolls around and I do my normal stuff for my school routine. Kiss my parents goodbye, and as I'm unlocking my car door, I notice something that stops me dead in my tracks. I felt the cold sweat creep up on me with a chill sliding down my spine. A forehead and 2 forearm prints were on my driver's side window. Never sat in my car after work again after that. I think about it from time to time, about what would have happened had my mother not come outside to check where I was. Were they looking into my car to break into it? Did they notice me completely defenseless and try to scare me? I have no idea, but I'm glad I never found out. This happened about 6 months ago. I, 19 female, was about halfway through my hours in cosmetology school and was taking clients. It was a regular Friday afternoon, and I was getting ready for my last client that I had scheduled. The book said his name was Tim, and he was a new guest that had never been to the school before. I went to go get Tim when he checked in, and the first thing he said to me was, "I ran all the way here for you. I ran all the way here for you on Wednesday too, but they said you were busy." I was like, what the heck? So I just laughed and thought maybe he was crazy or something. But things got really weird. Tim had these piercing blue eyes, and the only way I can describe him is that he looked like some kind of alien whose skin was too tight over his face. His appearance alone freaked me out. Then he started talking. He said, and I quote, "I have a twin brother that lives in Georgia. I went to go live with him for a while, but I had to run away because all the cops kept accusing me of breaking into homes and raping a bunch of women. So I ran all the way to Daytona Beach, Florida, but couldn't stay there long either because all the police were trying to shoot me. So I ended up running all the way back here to town. Needless to say, I cut his hair pretty fast just to get him out of there." I was beyond freaked out at this point, and when he was checking out, he said, "I'll be back again for you, Savannah." At that point, I told all the staff that if the man ever comes back, I'll refuse to do service on him. Come to find out later, a local news station released a story about a man that got out of the penitentiary after 23 years for the assault and murder of a 15-year-old girl while he was 15. It was a cold case for 16 years until they reopened the case and arrested this man. And then I saw his mugshot, and it was definitely Tim, a fake name at this point, and I started crying. To this day, I still look over my shoulder and have nightmares about him. He literally shook me to my core. My mom and her friends spent the day at the beach in Florida. The friend that drove had to go to work, but they stayed and said they would walk home. They were walking back and it was burning hot in the high 90s. A white pickup truck drove past them, then slowed down and made a U-turn. He stopped to talk to them. I should preface this with the fact that my mom and her friend were both drop dead gorgeous and wearing bikinis and shorts. They said the truck that stopped was driven by a young man that was very handsome and probably in his late 20s. He offered them a ride. My mom, who was always wary of strange men back then, said no, but her friend started to whine and said, "Come on, it's hot and we have another mile to go. It will just take a few minutes." My mom still didn't want to, but her friend climbed in the truck and my mom didn't want to leave her alone. So she reluctantly climbed in the front seat with her friend in between her and the man. Her friend was a chatty Kathy and she talked away to this guy without paying attention to anything around her. My mom had a bad feeling and noticed the man still hadn't turned his truck around and was heading out to the dunes, where there was basically nothing but deserted beaches for miles. She looked over and realized he had pulled all of his junk out of his pants and was masturbating. My mom instantly became angry and she grabbed the door handle and opened it. She said, "You need to stop this truck right now and let us out, you sick weirdo." At the same time, her friend snapped out of it and saw what was going on. She flipped shit and, according to my mom, dived straight over her and out of the moving truck. As she jumped out, the man tried to grab her and only got a hold of her bikini top, so it came off. She said she watched as her friend hit the ground and it was like slow motion. The man then began to speed up. My mom was looking at how fast the ground was moving and he says, "You can stay in here with me or you can jump out. You're gonna die either way." That was enough for my mom, so she jumped out and skated across the road. Her entire left side was road rash from head to toe. She lay on the ground dazed and wondering if she was going to die. Her now topless friend ran over to her screaming, "Get up, he's coming. He's coming back." My mom rolled over and looked in time to see him doing an upturn and speeding back to finish what he started. Her friend helped her back up and they ran towards the beach. They just happened to jump out right where the lifeguard station was. They were greeted by lifeguards, many of them their friends who administered first aid. My mom went through enough months of healing and had a sprained ankle. Her friend was unharmed, and the man was never caught. This happened to one of my best friends and me a few months ago. Usually after work, she gets to the train station and drives home. But since I've told her about this subreddit, she calls me as soon as she gets off the train, and we don't hang up till she's safely in her car. She kind of leaves her phone in her pocket or hand and doesn't talk, but it's reassuring for her to have me there with her. My friend calls earlier than usual, and I greet her happily as I'm clicking away, murdering the Dalmor. And then she suddenly says, "Mom, we need to buy some milk. I need it for the birthday cake. Yeah, we need to get it from the one near the city. It's his favorite." The problem with this sentence is, 1, my friend couldn't bake for crap, and 2, she's lactose intolerant. Anyway, I realized something was obviously wrong, and I asked our floor mates to come to the situation with me and told them that we need to go pick her friend up. When we arrive, I ring her up again, and she says, "Yeah, Mom, I know. We might have to get the guys to set it up on the platform. I went to their office this morning. Yeah, it'll be safe for the kids to play on." So my friend and I make our way to the main office, and our friend Power walks with us out of there, and she doesn't speak until we're well and truly away from the station. I make sure to take a bunch of unnecessary turns, and we cruise around the city for a long time to make sure we're not being followed. She said that there were a few guys on the carriage that were making her uneasy. About 3 or 4 of them were sitting in the back of the car and talking. They were describing my friend in exact detail, right down to what color nail polish she had on, what station she usually got off at, and what her car looked like. Her plan was to act like she was staying on till her stop, but leave right before the door closed on the stop before it. They were speaking German, not very quietly either. My friend grew up speaking 5 languages, one of them being German. She didn't take trains for a good 3 months following that incident. Not that I blame her. It's a bit dark, but sometimes we do theorize what they were planning on doing. I believe it might have been a human trafficking ring or something similar. The guys think gang rape, and my friend thinks a combination of both. I've always felt a bit silly making my friends invent coded sentences with me or calling them on the way home, because I like scaring myself silly. I honestly never thought it would come in handy. I'll never stop being thankful to this subreddit for making me overly cautious. I might have lost my best friend that night. I really am very grateful. I hate the fact that I have a story to even post to this subreddit, but it goes to show you when living in a major metropolitan city, you never know what walks of life you'll pass by. Or drop off, I suppose. In 2003, I was a 16-year-old employee at an urban clothing store here on the south side of Chicago. At the time, I had a manager who was in his early 20s, by the name of Anthony. Anthony was a pretty arrogant and obnoxious, but overall, he was a pretty cool guy. I used to kind of give him crap and tease him when it came to approaching the ladies because he always seemed timid or too aggressive. I was and still am a ladies' man, so yeah, I was being an asshole. After working at this place for about 3 months, Anthony asked me if I would drop him off at home. It wasn't far from the direction I was headed in, so I dropped him off maybe twice a week for the next month or so. Now let me tell you, these car rides were quite uncomfortable. This guy, as much as we spoke at work, would not speak and sort of just kept looking straight. It got to the point that his awkwardness went from entertaining. I was 16. Most awkward people are interesting to teenagers. To straight creepy. Fast forward 3 to 4 years later, I'm watching the news as they go into detail of a horrific crime committed by a Comcast installation worker. Apparently, the Comcast worker entered 2 homes. He was due for an installation, raped, beat, and strangled 2 women. The real unfortunate thing is this happened on 2 different occasions, and after the first murder, the gentleman was arrested and questioned, but released and sent back to work, which allowed him to strike again. As the picture of his mugshot flashed the screen, I froze. It was Anthony. Now, growing up on the south side of Chicago, I have grown up and befriended a fair share of people who grew up to be murderers, but this took the cake for the craziest. I and a friend were talking about this girl's sleepover that we went to at school. It was all a manner of messed up. I think we must have been 11 or 12, and this girl was having a sleepover for her birthday. She was part of our group and we were excited, as we have never even been to this particular friend's house before. Our parents put an amazing amount of effort into the party. There was a buffet, a barbecue, cake, and even a clown. We were kind of embarrassed by the clown. We thought we were too old and it was just kind of awkward, but that was nothing compared to the dad's party games. First one. Find the 50 pence. He hid 50 pence pieces around the house and we had to find them. Only he was chasing us and hooting and really screaming, like a hyperactive child. Again, we were embarrassed, but the birthday girl seemed to be having a good time, so we pretended to be in the spirit of things. Then there was the wish game. He wanted us to sit on his knee and tell him a wish. Now I'm really uncomfortable, and I could tell my friend is as well, but the birthday girl's on her dad's knee, telling him her wishes. Before we knew it, he was looking at my friend, petting his lap. At the time, I thought my friend put in commendable effort not to look horrified. But looking back, there is no way in heck that he could have thought she was comfortable sitting on his knee. She sits on his knee, mumbles her wish, then it's my turn. Fool I am, because I thought I would get a pass being a boy, but no such luck. He's patting his knee, looking at me, so I sit there and told him a wish. Nothing overtly sinister happened, but the whole thing put me and my friend a little at ease. After that came the cellar game. That's what he called it. And I'm thinking, heck no. I'm not going into a cellar with this creepy old man, and I can tell my friend is almost panicking at the thought. But then the dad takes up a rug, and there's a trapdoor under it, leading to the cellar, and I'm thinking, well, if that's not the coolest thing. So we go down in the cellar. And truth be told, it was pretty cool at first. The dad had a candle, and that was the only light with the door closed. It was a small concrete room, and we sat on the floor while the dad told us creepy stories. I got the feeling these weren't age-appropriate stories, and our parents wouldn't have been happy if they had been there. And that made it all the more cooler. He's telling his story, getting to the creepy reveal bit, and then he blows out the candle. We are plunged into absolute darkness. I'm laughing and shouting, as is the birthday girl. My friends are really laughing. She actually sounds panicked. We get out of the cellar, and I'm saying how cool that was, but my friend looks really upset. Before bed, I managed to catch her alone and ask her whether she's alright. She tells me that after the dad blew out the candle, he tickled her in the dark, kind of put his head into her neck. She's really frightened and makes me promise I'll stay awake with her in case the dad does something. My friend's asleep, as is the birthday girl, and I'm really tired, but my friend made me promise, and the truth is, I feel like a knight in shining armor. I must stay awake to protect my friend, and lo and behold, I can hear someone creeping up the stairs. Slowly, like they're trying to not make a noise. And then the door opens, and the dad sticks his head around the door. He stays like that for what seems like ages, at least 2 or 3 minutes, just watching. He mustn't notice me because I'm not making an effort to pretend to be asleep. I'm just watching him, watching her, my friend. He then walks into the room and over to my friend. He just kind of stands over her, watching her. I'm completely freaked out, and despite feeling like a knight in shining armor 10 minutes ago, I now have no idea what to do, and I can feel pinpricks behind my eyes. I didn't even realize I was holding my breath until I let it go and made a noise. At this, the dad looks my way. I remember his eyes going really wide, and then he sort of scurried really fast out of the room. My heart was hammering away, and I was looking at my friend wanting to wake her up. I didn't, though, and at some point I must have fallen asleep because I woke up the next morning. To put this into context, I'm an 18-year-old girl living in New Zealand. I suffer from anxiety and shut down in stressful situations and become rather overwhelmed when I'm not sure how to deal with something. This story happened yesterday while I was waiting at my bus station to catch a bus home. I'd had a long day at work and my legs were in pain, and all I wanted to do was get home and watch some YouTube in bed. It was getting dark and the sun was almost completely down. As I was listening to some music in a rather deserted area at the bus station, a man considerably larger than myself sauntered up and sat down directly next to me on the bench, which I didn't think much of. To put this into perspective, I'm roughly 55 kilograms. He must have been at least 100 and could have easily overpowered me. I noticed out of the corner of my eye that this man was staring at me and began to feel a little uncomfortable, but put it down to him looking at my mask. It's rather nondescript and just black. I ignored this and acted busy on my phone to avoid talking. As I said, I had a long day at work. The man began to talk, and I pulled out my AirPod to listen to what he was saying to me. The AirPod fell and landed on the ground, to which he picked it up for me, held onto it, and stared at it for a few seconds before handing it back. I was already getting bad vibes from this man. The conversation went something like this. Wow, your eyes are beautiful. Did you get them from your mom or dad? My mom, I guess. I kept my eyes short to try to signify I wasn't in the mood for talking, but he continued. What bus are you catching? Where do you live? I laughed nervously and told him I didn't feel very comfortable sharing where I lived, but I told him it was farther up north. He then said, Why? It's not like I'm going to rape you. Isn't it really fancy up there? This where I was beginning to feel very seriously uncomfortable and began to shake. He asked if I had a boyfriend, to which I said yes, and he proceeded to ask if I planned to marry him, to which I laughed and said yes. Oh, it kind of sounds like you're just rooting him. Are you sure you want to marry him? I was shocked and looked at him before telling him again, yes, I do plan to marry my partner. How old are you? I don't know what came over me, but I told him I was 21 to try to make it come across that I was old enough to stand up for myself. Are you on the pill? I'm sorry, I don't feel comfortable sharing that and don't see why you need to know. Oh, so you use condoms instead, huh? I wanted to walk away, but I was grounded to the bench and couldn't move a muscle if I tried. I was uncomfortable and confused as to why he was asking these questions. Do you have somebody waiting for you at the bus stop, or are you walking home? How far do you live from the stop? This is the question that made everything click into place, and I realized that this guy had horrible intent. He's not being friendly. This man is going to follow me home and either try to assault me or kidnap me in some way. I started to really panic and started desperately looking for onlookers. A young man, possibly my age, walked out of the public bathroom last and had overheard this conversation and was looking at the predator rather skeptically. I knew then I'd at least have someone to help if I just asked for it. I didn't. By this point, I recalled a video from r/ about a highly pregnant woman and her daughter being followed to their car in an empty car park, in the dark by an older man. This lady was stressfully trying to find her keys in her purse as this man was standing beside her daughter on the opposite side of the car, making small talk with them. He got impatient and walked away before she found her keys. Someone commented on her submission saying this was a popular thing and that he was waiting for her to unlock the car so he could get in and control her via threats for children. It occurred to me that I should skip my bus and catch another one at a later time. I did this exactly. He kept asking where I live, and I continued to refuse to tell him where. He also continued to ask how far I live from the stop and if my partner was waiting for me. I deflected all of his questions, and after 40 minutes, he began to get grumpy and walked away from the situation. He wasn't there to catch a bus at all, but to prey on a young woman at a bus stop. I caught my bus about 10 minutes after he left, and I ran home where I completely broke down and cried in the arms of my partner. This morning I was so stressed. I contemplated taking the day off work and staying in bed the rest of the day. I was petrified. I didn't, by the way. I'm at work posting this now. I was at my mom's house, which was a basement apartment of a house. My mom was an alcoholic and drug addict, so typically had very unsavory characters around. I was about 8 years old. Friday. My mom had this guy, Nino, come around 2 to 3 times before. She went upstairs to the main part of the house to cook dinner. I was left downstairs with this guy, whom she met a handful of times partying. We were both sitting on the sectional couch. He was in the corner seat, feet up on the couch, with work boots on. Lounging. I was sitting on the cushion next to him, but with an arm's length between us. He was staring at me with a half smile and asked me a few random questions about school. I stared straight ahead at the TV. I don't remember the questions, but even at 8, I was very intuitive due to always having to observe and be on guard in my surroundings. I remember being very creeped out and afraid to move too obviously. Then he took the back of his fingers and then rubbed them up and down my arm in a slow motion on my bare skin. He was flirting with an 8-year-old. My mom calls us up for dinner about this time, and I guess he leaves shortly after. I was scared and didn't want to be around him again. On Sunday, my mom's other partying friend Jim comes over early, knocks on the door, and asks to speak with my mom at the top of the driveway. I overheard him tell her basically that she needs to stay away from Nino because he's told Jim that he had his eye on me and he wanted to do stuff to me. My mom argues with him and is basically like, "Yeah, right, no way, you're being dramatic." Jim is pleading with her and she doesn't believe him. Cool. A week later, my mom, my younger brother, and I were in her coworker's car, headed to her job. My mom was reading the newspaper and said, "Wow, Nino had been arrested for breaking into a home and sexually assaulting someone." I was shook. For months later, I struggled to sleep. We were in the basement apartment and there was a large sliding door and a ground level window in the bedroom. I was afraid he would get out of jail and I would see him in the window coming for me. Three years ago, October in Minnesota, I had just started dating my now wife. I was obsessed with working out and asked her if she would like to use one of my guest passes at the YMCA. She begrudgingly agreed and we started heading to the closest YMCA near her house. We were a couple of miles away from the gym, with my wife driving south on a busy street when I noticed on the other side of the road heading north, a woman was walking on the sidewalk while holding something. Next to her driving slowly on the shoulder of the road was an F-350. The hairs on my neck stood up and I shuddered after seeing them. My whole body had goosebumps. I told my wife that she needed to do a U-turn so we could see what was going on. We did the U-turn and got behind the F-350. I noticed immediately that the woman was barefoot and holding a baby wrapped in a blanket. I got out of the car and I told my wife to stay in the car and to call the police if anything happened. When I started walking towards the woman, the first thing I noticed was that she was barefoot. With it being October in Minnesota, The temperature was around 50 degrees Fahrenheit, so nobody would be walking around without shoes and socks on. When I got closer to her, I saw the baby was only wearing a diaper wrapped up in a thin blanket. As I got closer, I could hear the guy in the truck yelling at the woman to please get in the truck. Get in the truck now. I finally reached the woman and asked her if she was okay and if she needs help. She said yes and that the guy wouldn't leave her alone though. Right then, a different woman started jogging past. I forgot my phone in the car, so I asked the woman jogging if she had the cell phone and if she could call the police, which she did immediately. I turned around to face the truck and I see the man getting out. As he is walking towards us, he is now pleading with the woman to get in the truck with him. I positioned myself between him and the woman, and he stopped when he was about 3 feet away from me. I told him that he wasn't going to come any closer and that the police were coming. Now, while the guy stopped walking towards us, he completely ignored me and didn't acknowledge what I just said. This is where it gets a little bit weird. The two of them start having a conversation that made zero sense with me standing between them. He said, "Honey, just get in the truck and come home." She said, "You kicked me out and told me to leave." "No, I didn't. I came upstairs and you and the baby were gone." She said, "You never let me leave," opposite of what she just said, and never let me do anything and never let me spend any of our money. "We don't have any money. Our credit cards are maxed out. You don't have shoes on and our baby is cold. Please, let's just go." She yelled, "I'm never coming home with you. You don't let us do anything ever." At this point, 2 police cars showed up with 4 cops. 1 cop spoke with the man, 1 with the woman, and the other 2 cops took statements from both the jogger and me. I'm not sure what took place that day with the couple and the baby. I stepped in because I had automatically assumed that some sort of abuse was taking place where the woman was trying to escape him. Maybe that was happening, or maybe the woman was having a mental breakdown. I will never know. Either way, one of the strangest 10 minutes of my life.